The match was over when Jacob Fatu made Roman Reigns look smaller than the championship in his hands. That was the image nobody could escape. Roman had survived. The bell had rung. The result was official. In the record book, it was another Roman Reigns victory. Another night where the tribal chief found a way to remain standing at the center of WWE. But the camera was not interested in the winner. It was interested in Jacob Fatu. He picked up the title, stood over Roman, and turned a victory into a warning. That is what made the moment feel different. This was not just another post-match attack on WWE Raw or SmackDown. It was not a random beat to set up the next premium live event. It felt like something inside the bloodline had finally escaped the rules Roman spent years building. Roman Reigns did not lose the match. He lost control of the ending. For a man like Roman, that might be worse. Because Roman's entire career as the tribal chief has been about control. The pace of the match, the timing of the interference, the silence before the promo, the way the crowd waits for him before he even says a word. Roman does not simply enter a room, he slows it down until everyone inside it has to move at his speed. That is why the Bloodline became the greatest WWE storyline of this generation. It was never only about titles. The Undisputed Championship mattered, the WrestleMania main events mattered, the long title reign mattered, but the real story was always power inside a family. Roman turned blood into authority. He made the word family sound less like love and more like an order. Jey Uso learned that first. Solo SIKOA carried it like a weapon. Paul Heyman treated it like religion. And for years, Roman stood above all of them as the man who could demand acknowledgement and make refusal feel dangerous. But Jacob Fatu does not feel like a man who is built to acknowledge anyone. That is the problem. When Jacob moves, he does not move like a cousin trying to earn Roman's respect. He moves like a man who thinks respect is something weaker people ask for when they cannot take space by force. His body language is not polished, it is not ceremonial, it does not fit the slow, royal rhythm Roman created. Jacob is faster than the story wants him to be. That is why he feels dangerous. Roman's violence has always had style. The spear, the guillotine, the slow stare into the hard camera, the way he turns every match into a test of patience. Even when Roman destroys someone, he does it like a man making a point. Jacob Fatu destroys like the point already made itself. That difference is what makes this match, this angle, and this WWE Bloodline story feel alive again. Roman does not need another ordinary challenger. He has already beaten legends, champions, monsters, and ghosts from his past. He has already stood in the ring with Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Seth Rollins, and almost every major name connected to his era. Another challenger saying, "I want the title," is not enough. Jacob is not interesting because he wants the title, he is interesting because he makes the title look like evidence. When he held it over Roman, the championship did not look stolen. It looked like proof that Roman's world could be touched by someone he could not command. And that is the real story. For years, Roman Reigns controlled the bloodline by making everyone believe the family had a shape. Roman at the top, everyone else below. The table, the finger in the air, the wise man, the entrance, the slow walk, all of it created one message. This is Roman's kingdom. Jacob Fatu walks into that kingdom like he never agreed it belonged to Roman in the first place. That is why the match cannot be treated like a normal Roman Reigns main event. The tension is not only in who wins. Roman can win and still fail. He already proved that. The tension is in whether he can make Jacob follow the rhythm of his world. Inside the ring, Roman wants structure. He wants the match to slow down. He wants the crowd to feel the weight of every pause, every breath, every glance. That is where Roman is most dangerous. He makes opponents rush. He lets emotion burn them out. Then he catches them with one spear, one guillotine, one mistake. Jacob is the kind of opponent who can ruin that plan before it begins. He does not need a long opening sequence. He needs one sudden burst that makes Roman take a step back. One strike that lands too hard. One dive that feels reckless enough to change the air. One moment where Roman rolls outside and the crowd realizes he did not leave the ring to pose. He left because he needed a second to think. That second matters. A wrestler like Roman is not made vulnerable by getting hit. Everyone gets hit. Roman is made vulnerable when the match stops obeying him. That is where Jacob Fatu can hurt him most. Not by proving he is stronger in every exchange, that would be too simple. The better story is that Roman keeps finding answers, but none of them last long enough to comfort him. He slows Jacob down, Jacob rises too early. He lands a major shot, Jacob keeps moving. He traps him, Jacob turns the hold into a fight, Roman gets control, then realizes control against Jacob is something you borrow for a few seconds, not something you own. That is the match. Roman trying to turn chaos into order. Jacob refusing to stay ordered. This is also why old bloodline history should only sit in the background, like a shadow. The story does not need to replay every chapter. It only needs the memory of what Roman did. Those memories matter because they explain why Jacob feels like a consequence. Roman spent years teaching the family that violence could be justified if it served the name. Jacob seems to have learned the violence and ignored the justification. He is the bloodline without the speech. No lecture about respect, no long sermon about legacy, no careful explanation of why the pain is necessary, just impact. That is why the crowd reacts to him differently. They are not only watching a monster, they are watching something Roman may have helped make possible. Not because Roman trained Jacob, not because Roman directly created him, but because Roman created a world where the strongest man in the family gets to decide what loyalty means. Jacob looked at that world and found the flaw. What happens when the strongest man is not Roman? That is the question this WWE storyline should chase. Roman can talk about being the tribal chief. He can talk about the family name, the years on top, the burden of carrying WWE, the nights he main evented WrestleMania and walked out with the company on his back, and none of that is false. Roman Reigns did become the defining champion of the modern era, but Jacob Fatu does not argue with a resume, he answers with presence. Some wrestlers become smaller when they explain themselves. Jacob is one of them. The less he says, the more dangerous he feels. Roman's power is verbal as much as physical. He needs people to believe in the mythology. Jacob's power is the interruption of that mythology. Roman says, "Acknowledge me." Jacob makes him look up. That is cleaner than any promo, and when the match gets deeper, that contrast should become physical. Roman's spear should not feel like the end the first time it lands. It should feel like Roman asking the old question and not getting the old answer. Maybe Jacob kicks out, maybe he rolls to the floor, maybe he survives in a way that does not make him look invincible, but does make Roman look uncertain. That uncertainty is the gold, not fear, not panic. Roman Reigns should never look like a coward. He should look like a man processing information he does not like. The old tools still work, they just do not finish the job. That is how you protect both men. Roman remains elite because he adapts. Jacob becomes special because adapting to him is exhausting. A perfect Roman versus Jacob match would not be fast from start to finish, it would have ugly pockets. Roman grinding him down, Jacob exploding out, Roman using experience to cut him off, Jacob making the crowd gasp, with movement that looks impossible for someone built like him. The match should feel like Roman is trying to write a sentence, and Jacob keeps tearing the page. Every time Roman creates order, Jacob damages it. And if Roman wins, it should not feel like closure, it should feel like survival. That is the key. Roman can pin Jacob, Roman can escape with the victory, Roman can raise his hand at the end. But the final image cannot give him peace. Jacob should leave something behind. A stare, a sit-up, a final attack. A look from Roman that says he understands the next fight will not be easier. Because the real damage is not in the loss. The real damage is in the doubt. Roman's entire tribal chief run was built on certainty. Even when he was hated, he was certain. Even when the crowd rejected him, he was certain. Even when the bloodline started cracking, he carried himself like the cracks were just noise. Jacob makes certainty harder. That is why this feud is bigger than one match. It gives Roman Reigns something fresh after the end of his historic title reign. It stops him from becoming only a legend people remember. It puts him back in danger right now, and danger is where Roman works best. The Roman Reigns character was never great because he was unbeatable. He was great because every win felt like it cost someone else a piece of themselves. Against Jacob Fatu, the cost finally comes back to him. That is the poetic part. Roman used family as protection. Now family is the threat. He used fear to hold the bloodline together. Now fear has changed sides. He made the table sacred. Now Jacob looks like the first man willing to break it without asking who gets to sit at the head. This is why WWE should not rush the story into a simple good guy versus bad guy direction. Roman does not need to become innocent. Jacob does not need to become cartoon evil. The best version is messier. Roman can be wrong and still be compelling. Jacob can be dangerous and still feel justified by the world Roman helped create. That gray area is what made the bloodline famous. It was never clean. Jay loved Roman and hated what Roman did to him. Solo looked loyal until loyalty started to look like ambition. Paul Heyman served Roman like a wise man, but even that loyalty always felt tied to survival. Jacob brings that old discomfort back without repeating the same story. He is not here to cry in front of Roman. He is not here to ask for a shirt. He is not here to stand behind him and wait for a signal. He is here to make Roman answer for the thing Roman built. And maybe the most interesting future is not Jacob taking the title. Maybe it is Roman being forced to turn toward the people he once damaged. Imagine Roman needing Jey Uso's help, not as a right hand, but as a man who understands what the family becomes when control turns rotten. That would be a real consequence. Roman demanded acknowledgement for years. Trust is harder. Trust cannot be ordered from the center of the ring, it cannot be forced with a spear, it cannot be whispered into existence by Paul Heyman. If Roman ever needs trust to survive Jacob Fatu, then the bloodline story has found a new wound. Because Roman knows how to lead through fear, he does not know how to ask. That is what makes Jacob Fatu valuable. He does not only challenge Roman's body, he challenges the system Roman used to make himself untouchable. He forces the audience to look at the bloodline and wonder if it was ever a family under Roman, or just a room full of people waiting for someone violent enough to stop kneeling. That is a brutal question, and wrestling is best when the question hurts. The post-match image works because it says all of this without saying any of it. Roman down, Jacob standing, the championship held by the wrong hands. The match finished, but the story suddenly more alive than it had been before the bell. That is how you make a moment matter on WWE Raw, on SmackDown, and in the larger bloodline story. You do not just ask who won, you ask what the win failed to protect. Roman won the match. He did not protect the fear. For years, fear belonged to him. Opponents feared the spear. Referees feared losing control. The roster feared the family appearing at ringside. Even the audience feared the familiar pattern. Roman in trouble, chaos arrives, Roman survives. Jacob took that pattern and broke it after the match. He made Roman's victory feel incomplete. He made the tribal chief look like a man who could still be reached. That is why the next chapter matters. Roman Reigns is not finished. Jacob Fatu has not replaced him. This is not the end of the bloodline, it is something more useful. It is the first time in a long time that Roman's world feels unsafe from the inside. The monster is not coming from outside the family. The monster is what happens when the family stops obeying Roman's version of the story, and that is why the title in Jacob's hands looked so dangerous. Not because he had won it, not because Roman had been erased. It looked dangerous because everyone understood how easily the symbol could move. That question is the story now. Can Roman Reigns still control the bloodline, or did he spend years creating the one thing powerful enough to break it? The match was over when Roman lost control. The victory was real, the title was still his. But Jacob Fatu walked out with the thing Roman protected longer than any championship. The fear in the room. And once Roman Reigns no longer owns that, everything he built starts to shake.